Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to join my fellow provincial leaders, Premier Higgs, Premier Moe, and Premier Kenney, to help lead Canada down a path to new and important energy alternatives. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by my all-star Minister of Energy, Northern Development and Mines, Greg Rickford. And on the line are many of our stakeholders, including Ken Hartwick, President and CEO of Ontario Power Generation. Back in December of 2019, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Saskatchewan signed a memorandum of understanding to advance the development of small modular reactors, better known as SMRs. Today, I am pleased to welcome Premier Kenney and the great province of Alberta into the SMR fold. As we each sign on the dotted line, we commit to further developing this innovative technology. We're putting everyday workers and families first by taking steps towards creating new jobs in the SMR sector, a benefit to businesses in all our provinces. Ontario is leading the way on SMR development to create a more competitive business environment and clean, reliable energy future. And it is absolutely critical that we work with our partners in Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, and now Alberta to help further develop this evolving technology. SMRs have the potential to generate clean, low-cost, reliable energy, drive job creation, economic growth, and export opportunities. These are the types of opportunities that will help us lay the foundation for a strong economic recovery in the post-COVID-19 world. We will continue to work with businesses, stakeholders, and government partners on innovative energy solutions that protect the environment and grow the economy. It's a win-win for everyone. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario and all of Canada. Now, I'll pass it over to Premier Higgs.
Thank you, Premier Ford. Good afternoon. Bonjour. It is indeed a pleasure to participate again with my colleagues, Premier Ford, Premier Moe, and now Premier Kenney, in the release of an important feasibility study in the potential for small modular reactors. I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge others on the call with me today. Mike Holland, our Minister of Natural Resources and Energy, Rory O'Sullivan of Moltex Energy, Don Wolf of ARC Clean Energy, and Keith Cronkite, CEO of MB Power. SMRs will change the future of electrical generation. It will become the world's most sought-after technology. It's a knowledge area which Canada and New Brunswick knows well, along with Ontario, Saskatchewan, and now Alberta. We have combined our efforts to deliver a technology the world needs. The findings from this study simply confirm that we are on the right track. Les résultats de cette étude confirment tout simplement que nous sommes sur la bonne voie. 2 years ago, New Brunswick invited Ontario, Saskatchewan, and now Alberta to sign a memorandum of understanding, committing ourselves to collaborate on the development and deployment of small nuclear reactors right here in Canada. This feasibility study is a result of that partnership, which shows our pan-Canadian approach and working together as teammates. Cette étude de la faisabilité est le résultat de cet partenariat. With an investment of $10 million in 2018, New Brunswick was able to attract 2 high-quality companies, Moltex Advanced Reactor Concepts, or ARC, to the province. Both companies are now developing their technologies and completing regulatory requirements. Their combined efforts place New Brunswick and our provincial partners as world leaders in the advanced small modular reactor field, and that has already enhanced economic development in our provinces. In our State of the Province update, we announced our government would invest $20 million in ARC Clean Energy Canada in order to help it unlock significant private sector investment. We have a capable supply chain with existing industrial and mechanical businesses right across our province and in respective to our individual provinces that can participate in a worldwide SMR market and bring the revenue to each of our provinces successfully. Last month, the federal government announced an investment of $50.5 million in Moltex, a technology that recycles existing used nuclear fuel. At the same time, the federal government also announced an investment of almost $5 million in NB Power to prepare a Point Lepreau location for an SMR deployment and demonstration, as well as just over $500,000 to help the University of New Brunswick Center for Nuclear Energy Research expand its capability capability to support SMR technology development in New Brunswick. These are important steps toward making Canada a world leader in this field. And with the release of the feasibility study, we are all poised to go further. The study identified 3 streams of projects, with a second stream focused on the development of 2 advanced small modular reactor designs in New Brunswick. Il s'agit d'étapes importantes en vue de faire du Canada au chef de file dans ce secteur. Et avec le développement de cette étude de faisabilité, nous sommes prêts à aller encore plus loin. L'étude identifie 3 volets relatifs au projet. Le deuxième volet mise sur le développement de 2 modèles de petits réacteurs modulaires de pointe de Nouveau-Brunswick. The main New Brunswick designs represent significant economic diversification opportunities for the province and will place New Brunswick as the world leader in the deployment of the 4th generation of advanced SMR technologies. Today, we are seeing the result of a continued pan-Canadian approach with the formal inclusion of Alberta to our team. We truly are stronger and more effective together. C'est ce que nous faisons ici aujourd'hui. De plus, nous montrons aussi ce qu'il est possible de réaliser lorsque nous travaillons ensemble au profit du Canada. This technology will help us create a more prosperous and sustainable tomorrow for not only Canada and our future generations here, but worldwide. Thank you. Merci. And now I will ask my colleague, Premier Moe, to continue.
Thank you so much, Premier Higgs, and welcome to my colleagues, Premier Ford, Premier Kenney. I'm joined here with my Minister of the Environment, the Saskatchewan Minister of the Environment, Warren Keating. I'd just also like to welcome all of those distinguished guests and our colleagues that are on the call here today, as well as our stakeholders and supporters of SMR technology from across Canada. And good morning to each of you. I want to thank each of my fellow premiers for their remarks and their commitment on what I believe is a very crucial undertaking in this nation. And this is a good day. This is a good day for our provinces. It's a good day for all provinces, and it's a good day for Canada. And I believe it's a very good day as well for the world that is searching for solutions as to how we address climate change and to ensure a reliable supply of clean energy for decades to come. Premier Kenney, we're very grateful that Alberta is formally joining the effort to develop and deploy small modular reactor technology in Canada in a number of areas, in energy, in healthcare, in agriculture, as well as biotechnology. Alberta has demonstrated a tremendous research capacity, as well as a tremendous drive to innovate in wherever they turn their attention to. And there are obvious opportunities to deploy SMRs in the province of Alberta and across this nation. And we are most certainly, this memorandum of understanding today is stronger now that Alberta is on board. We are encouraged today by the findings of the feasibility report. I want to thank everyone who had a hand in completing it. The report lays out a number of pathways for development, and most importantly, it confirms that SMRs are feasible from both a technical as well as an economical perspective, and that they will support energy security in our nation of Canada, and it will help all the while in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, that conclusion was not surprising to any of my colleagues I know, given the track record of Canada's nuclear industry, an industry that is world-class in every respect. And in Saskatchewan, we know this firsthand. In Saskatchewan, we produce about 15 to 20% of the global supply of uranium from some of the richest ore bodies that you can find anywhere on Earth. And we have made a significant contribution to Canada's long and storied tradition of excellence in nuclear research. In the years ahead, we are going to continue to build on that tradition as we advance the deployment of SMRs. Folks, I truly believe that this technology will be a game changer for our economy as well as for our environment. We simply cannot deal with climate change without the widespread deployment of nuclear power. Environmentalist Michael Schellenberger makes this point eloquently, and he says, and I quote, "Every real world situation proves that nuclear power is the only way to significantly, deeply, and cheaply decarbonize energy supplies and thus address climate change." Thank you very much. I will turn it over to my colleague from Alberta, Premier Kenney. Welcome.
So much, Scott and Blaine and Doug. I'm joined by Alberta's Energy Minister, Sonia Savage, and Doug, I'm sure that Minister Rickford would agree that she's the real superstar amongst energy ministers. Thank you, colleagues, so much. I've been looking forward to this day. To be honest, when we got news about 18 months ago that you three had signed the initial memorandum of understanding on small modular nuclear reactor technology, my first reaction was, what about us? How did you forget Alberta? So I'm glad that we're now in this group to work together to find a Canadian solution that can be a real game changer for power production that is zero emitting. It was about 2 decades ago that my predecessor, Ralph Klein, first blue-skied about the idea of small nuclear reactors in northern Alberta to help fuel the oil sands and their development. A lot of people mocked and ridiculed him at that time, but I think his vision has now been validated. It's true that 20 years ago, we didn't have technology that could be scaled at that level. And the capital investments required in nuclear was so enormous that it simply wasn't, it couldn't be done on an local or industrial scale of that nature. But that's no longer the case. With the development of SMR technology, we can, in principle, develop small modular reactors for discrete industrial applications like, for example, fueling production of Canada's single most valuable natural asset, which is our bitumen, the Canadian oil sands. And I've had some very interesting discussions in recent months with the CEOs of Canada's largest oil sands producers, who increasingly are turning their attention to this because they understand, as we all do, that Canada has to make real step changes to reduce greenhouse gas, including carbon emissions, and that, as Premier Moe says, the single best way of doing that is through nuclear technology. I get very frustrated when I see some political voices who demand big reductions in emissions while simultaneously opposing the only zero-emitting source of electricity, which is, or certainly the lowest, which is nuclear. And so we've got to get in this game. We've got the natural resources. By the way, Scott, you're not the only guys with uranium around here. We've got some resources, and maybe we'll get into competing mining uranium in the future as global demand grows. But we have also world-leading technology in Ontario, championed by OPG, and of course in New Brunswick at Point Lepreau. So I'm really excited that Alberta will be joining in this working group between 4 provinces to find a Canadian solution. And I know we'll be willing to work with other governments and look at the technology not just here in Canada but around the world. One thing I've been clear about is, while we would love to see a Canadian SMR industry, Alberta might end up becoming a big purchaser of this kind of technology, and we've got to be mindful of what's happening globally as well. I hope we can be in that game in terms of the technology, so we can have a SMR platform that we could sell around the world, including to meet Alberta's future energy needs. And with that, I guess we'll now go, colleagues, to signing the agreement. Thank you all, colleagues.
Okay, we'll go to the phone line for questions. Just a reminder, if you are in the teleconference, to please press *1 to get into the queue. And with that, we'll get started with the first question.
From James Keller at the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi there. This is for really all of you, so whoever wants to jump in. We've seen yet more delays on the vaccine supply from Moderna. I'm just wondering how those delays and just the uncertainty of deliveries going forward have been affecting your COVID vaccine rollouts.
Well, I'll start off. We're being affected tremendously on the supply side with not just Moderna, but AstraZeneca. We have about 2.8 million appointments booked, and we just received the shipment of the previous Moderna and some AstraZeneca just in the last 48 hours. But as you can see, people are, public health units are canceling appointments out in Toronto on the East End. They had to cancel 10,000 appointments. In the Greater Toronto Area, York has had to cancel appointments. It makes it really turns into a logistical nightmare for us right now. So it's extremely difficult in the situation we're facing right now. So maybe we'll just kind of go around the clock here, and we'll go over to Premier Moe and then over to Alberta and New Brunswick.
We're creating it is creating some challenges and some rescheduled appointments here in Saskatchewan as well. The whole vaccine rollout, I think, has been challenging with respect to the erratic supply and not enough supply that has been provided to any of the provinces. We're running out here again this week as we start to receive a little bit more, and we haven't brought our pharmacies on, so we have a much more capacity than even what we've shown thus far. And I think this speaks as a little bit of a parallel to what we're talking about today. We don't have this domestic supply of vaccines that would be of great value to Canadians, and there are some investments by provincial and federal governments that are getting us into a better place there. And we're talking about today is, and Premier Kenney, I think, had said it very well. In the SMR industry, in the small modular reactor industry, as this technology becomes affordable and becomes usable, becomes economical, and most certainly becomes part of how we address our emissions profiles in the years ahead as we continue to produce power and electricity in all of our jurisdictions, that we get ahead of the game and become one of the first the first entries into this market, because we are, yes, going to use it, but there's no reason at all that we couldn't be participating in actually the production and some of the early investments in this technology for the benefit of people across this nation. And that's why we came together to sign this MOU, was to work together, as opposed to each of us working in isolation, but work together to really create the best value for not only the residents in our respective provinces, and not only the opportunities that we would have in our respective provinces, but the opportunities that we'd have if we can push this technology along collectively for not only our provinces, but all Canadians. The same holds true for vaccine development in the years ahead.
Okay, well, thank you, Doug. And as this has been a great frustration for us from the beginning, Moderna in particular, the unreliability of arrivals has, like Ontario, meant a lot of cancellations. We've typically been trying to deliver that vaccine in Alberta through pharmacies, and they've got limited capacity. They don't have a lot of staff, and when they book up 3 or 4 days of appointments to administer the Moderna vaccine and then have to delay or cancel, it's extremely frustrating for them and for their customers. One of the things we're concerned about is low take-up so far on the AstraZeneca for the 55 to 64-year-olds. And I just think that in terms of maximizing public willingness to get inoculated, we need a reliable stream. The more inconveniences, hurdles, cancellations, and delays there are, I think the more people who might just wait or opt out, and that's frustrating for us. It is frustrating to see other jurisdictions around the world that are at or above 50% of the population having been inoculated. It's frustrating to have seen Canada rank 40th or worse in terms of per capita access to doses. We have seen, in the last, of course, 2 or 3 weeks, significant doses start to arrive, and we're all doing our best to roll those out. So hopefully the situation will improve. Per Scott's point, Alberta and Ontario co-chaired a Council of the Federation working group for all provinces and territories to get a lay of the land of where we are at with vaccine development and potential production in Canada for domestic procurement alternatives. And we have identified several platforms, several projects that bear promise, obviously not for this phase of COVID, but potentially if we need modified vaccines that can address future variants we could have capacity for domestic production and certainly for future potential pandemics. So we need that, just like we need food security. Alberta just right now we've done an RFP, request for proposals, on potential vaccine projects in this province. I think we received, if I'm not mistaken, 17 responses. And some of them we think bear a lot of potential. As you know, last week I was announcing $20 million in funding for the Li Kai-shing Institute for Applied Virology at the University of Alberta, led by Nobel Prize winner Dr. Houghton. And those were one of the submissions that we received. We're analyzing those to see if there are next steps for us to take.
Was that certainly proportionally we're experiencing the same issue with the need for more vaccines and obviously the opportunities there to administer them. We've tried to prioritize and certainly looking at ones that are more exposed, not only in the age brackets, but also in looking at travelers and our routine essential services. So that's been an ongoing challenge. So I just the same as with my colleagues, but I would like to kind of connect a dot here in relation to vaccines and availability. And then the efforts that certainly my colleagues, as Premier Kenney just points out, between it and Ontario, and looking at the long-term solution and possible research and development in the vaccine capabilities and potential for domestic supply. The same logic can be used in what we're proposing today with SMRs. So we have been a resource-rich nation and relied on energy in many forms over the years. This is the kind of the next generation to all that. Because traditional energy forms are being hit really hard, and I've talked a lot about transition through this process, not a stop and hope for the best scenario, which unfortunately we seem to find ourselves heading towards. But in the case of energy reliability, not only being a world supplier with SMRs, but having a domestic supply here of an energy source that can meet our needs right here at home and then give us some security. So just as we're saying we need security with vaccines going forward, this COVID experience has taught us that we need that security in many other areas as a nation. And we can only expand on that capability to be more secure going down the road and for future generations.
Follow up?
Yeah, it's still on the vaccine topic. And again, whoever wants to jump in, Health Canada this morning said that they've looked at the evidence, and with AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, they're not going to be restricting it other than requiring people to inform patients about the risks. What do you think about that, and how has the issues with AstraZeneca, specifically now Johnson & Johnson, affected take-up, vaccine hesitancy when it comes to those specific vaccines?
Well, we need Health Canada and NACI to agree on lowering the age and down to 50 right now, and we need an answer like ASAP. It's absolutely critical, and if they lower the age, then we will be able to get more uptake on it. And as for Moderna, and if we can get it, Moderna and Pfizer, there is no hesitancy. We need a tremendous amount of Pfizer, because we know as soon as we put it into the mass vaccination centers, we can get rid of it immediately. But we just need certainty right now, and it's absolutely critical. The Moderna shipment has been delayed now three times. We won't see Moderna for another couple of weeks until the beginning of May. So it's very, very concerning, the situation Ontario is in right now, and we need to get as many people vaccinated as possible. If we had all the vaccines that we needed, we'd be able to vaccinate the whole province in less than a month, 9.4 million if we had the 3,200 pharmacies going full steam, and all the mass vaccination centers, the hospitals, mobile units. But we're taking a targeted approach into the hot areas right now, and really focusing on that.
I'm good.
Well, I'll just add that overall, we've actually seen an increase in the percentage of Albertans who want to get vaccinated. So just in the past month or so, we've gone from 76% to over 78% who say they'll get vaccinated. So that's moving in the right direction. But there's no doubt that I think there's just been confusion about who qualifies for and other related concerns about the AstraZeneca. We have, pharmacies where people right now can do walk-in appointments to get the AstraZeneca. We have the rapid flow-through clinics that can do 1,000 vaccinations an hour in Edmonton and Calgary and others in the mid-sized cities. And a lot of those doses are sitting there. Those flow-through clinics are not being fully utilized. So if you're between 55 and 64, please get out there and use those vaccines. I agree with Doug. We would like hopefully clarity on reducing the age. I will point out that I gather we're not aware of a single blood clotting incident reported as an adverse reaction through the use of AstraZeneca in Canada. And in the United Kingdom, the last data I saw a few days ago was that out of, I believe, over 10 million AstraZeneca doses that had been administered, there were 30 cases of blood clots. So there is no doubt that the risk of COVID is significantly higher than any fractional risk posed by the AstraZeneca vaccine. We'd ask people to follow that scientific advice.
Just briefly echo that. We know that our safest situation is being vaccinated, and with the variants now certainly widespread throughout our country, we need to maybe we'd like to wait, but if we don't get the herd immunity, the variant is not waiting. And so, I guess I went out and had the AstraZeneca, and I'm feeling fine here, so I don't know that there's any. I just think everything is a risk, but COVID is a greater risk. And to Premier Kenney's point, we need to take a maybe risk in life, but this situation, Health Canada, the stats are so low in having a problem that we just have to get vaccinated in mass. We have to get our herd immunity up to the 75-80% level, or we'll be talking about this next year. So we are encouraging everyone here to really get out, get vaccinated. And as we've often said, the best defense we have is offense, and it's being vaccinated whenever it's possible to do so.
I just quickly would agree with each of my colleagues. Between the delays and the erratic shipments that we've had of vaccines, and between the variable, the variance of advice that we have had from, in this case now, Health Canada and NACI, we all need to get together on our advice. I agree with Doug. The advice of NACI, Health Canada needs to be uniform, needs to be clear to Canadians so that they know the vaccine that is being made available to them is most certainly safe. And we need to have a reliable supply of that vaccine, of which, quite frankly, we just have not had to this date. The provincial capacity is there to deliver that supply should it arrive. To agree with Premier Higgs, the risk of any of these vaccines is far lower than the risk of continuing on for the next number of months with what we have been dealing with over the course of the last 14 months. Risk of COVID is much higher to our friends and family, and so we're encouraging everyone in Saskatchewan. We're going to put a vaccine in front of you that is safe for your age category. We encourage you to consider getting your shot, and let's all stick it to COVID. That's the motto that we're using here in Saskatchewan, and we think we're going to find our way through this very, very soon and be able to talk about great investments in the electrical industry, for example, like SMRs.
Good job.
Next question.
From Lorenda Redekop at CBC News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Premier Ford, you say that you're taking a targeted approach when it comes to vaccinations, but we're seeing these hospitals in the hot zones canceling appointments or having to stop their clinics. And these are in regions described as on fire right now, while other parts of the province are further along in their rollout. So 2 parts to this. First, will you change vaccine allocation within Ontario? And have you called on the federal government to give Ontario a bigger share?
Well, I'm just going to correct you. We aren't further behind. I think we're number 2 next to my good friend Scott Moe. But this isn't about a competition. This isn't about who's first, who's second. We're vaccinating 110,000 people in one day. This is about having a consistent supply. This is no different than running a business on a production line. We need a consistent supply that we can ramp up. And the only way we're going to get through this is by making sure that we vaccinate as many people in Ontario and right across this country. Everyone's trying, everyone's working. It's easy to sit back and start pointing fingers at municipalities or provinces or the federal government. We need to work together and make sure we move forward. As for, let's use Scarborough, for example. And I don't blame them for doing this because they're absolute champions out in Scarborough. They have booked more appointments, hoping that they'd get more vaccines, hoping that the Moderna shipment that's been delayed 3 times now, and we won't get for another few weeks, they were hoping it would come in. So I don't blame them for overbooking 10,000 appointments. I don't blame York for doing that as well. We were expecting the shipments to come in. And unfortunately, we never ended up getting them. Moderna is booked out till I think sometime the first week in May. So there'll be a point of 2 to almost 3 weeks. And that's if we get it, because it's been delayed 3 times, to make sure that we have a sustainable flow of vaccines. You can't plan properly if you don't know the flow of the product coming in through your production lines, per se, if I can use that terminology in business.
Follow-up?
Follow-up for one of my colleagues from Radio Canada. Some officials in Quebec are saying that the government should consider either some type of border controls or potential closure of its border with Ontario. What do you think about that?
Well, I think all the premiers, and by the way, all of us have a phenomenal relationship, all 13 premiers, all provinces and the 3 territories. We get along extremely well. We all work together. We're encouraging all residents of each province to stay at home, not to be flying into Ontario or flying out of Ontario. It's just not the time to do that. Folks, please stay at home. We're in a critical situation right now, and I just can't emphasize that enough. We're asking two things. Please stay at home, and when your turn comes up, please get vaccinated as quickly as possible.
Last question.
From Kevin Nimmock at CTV Calgary. Please go ahead.
Hi, Premiers. In Alberta this week, we saw protesters at our legislature yelling, "Lock her up," at our Chief Medical Officer of Health and calling Alberta Health Services investigators Nazis. Given the rising climate of division, are you concerned for the safety of your health and law enforcement personnel in your province?
Well, I'll take that first. Kevin, as you know, I responded to that event and those chants 2 days ago. Those comments, those chants were disgusting. The people responsible should be ashamed of themselves. Our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hinshaw, is a consummate professional. She has done nothing but give her very best expert scientific advice. She's a born and raised 4th-generation Albertan who loves this province, and she has done her very best to advise us on a sensible approach that protects both lives and livelihoods. And so, as you know, this is not the first time that she has faced that kind of language of threat and intimidation. I can assure you that our Sheriff's Department tracks any actual threats that are being made against public servants, and they provide all necessary support. I won't go further than that, but I'll say that, and I know that in Saskatchewan, Scott might want to comment on this, that his Chief Medical Officer faced similar kind of intimidation tactics. Let me say that I have welcomed, this is the irony, in Alberta, I have welcomed a debate about how best to respond to the threat of this pandemic. As Dr. Hinshaw herself has said repeatedly, there's no one way through COVID. And I understand the deep frustration that many people have with public health measures, and they are free to use their charter-protected freedom of speech to speak their minds. But to come out by the hundreds, to stand in front of the legislature and to call for a respected public servant to be arrested is disgusting, outrageous, it's un-Albertan, it's un-Canadian. Shame on those responsible. If there's anything good that comes out of it, and I'll say this directly to those people, is all they do is a disservice to their own cause with statements like that. Just like those clowns who went onto the Enoch Reserve the other day trespassed on sovereign First Nations territory. One of them was arrested for shouting racial epithets at a First Nations woman. They vandalized Chief Billy Morin's vehicle. This kind of conduct is totally unacceptable. And I call on those responsible to stop it. We need to come together as a society here. We have, hopefully, if we start getting decent vaccine supply, we will get past this spring. But this kind of conduct and those kinds of threats cannot be tolerated.
Follow up?
I would just echo. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead, Premier.
I would echo Premier Kenney's comments with respect to the very divisive conversation that has been out there for some period of time now, and there's no place for comments about people that are doing their level best to come forward with the best advice to keep people safe in our communities. In saying that, we have all been living under wherever you are in Canada, likely the largest public health orders, the public health orders that we ever have in this nation, to my knowledge. There's an economic impact to the response to COVID in this nation as well. It's likely the largest economic impact since the Second World War. But that aside, there's no place for us as Canadians treating anyone in the manner that we are seeing in certain areas across this nation. Premier Kenney alluded to the path through this, and there is only one path through this. Public health orders buy us time, and that is to have mass access to vaccines for all Canadians in this nation. And to the earlier question about how the provincial governments, the territorial governments are delivering these vaccines, trust me when I say the issue with providing these vaccines to Canadians is not at the provincial level. It is at the federal procurement level. We just simply do not have access in Canada to enough vaccines quick enough. And that is showing, you don't have to look too far away. If you look just south of the border, we're now in this situation where Canada has more net cases than the USA does. They have 10 times the population we do. They had a far greater infection level than we did in Canada, and the only difference is they have had much earlier access due to domestic production, much earlier access to a much higher level of vaccines. And we see now that the US is coming through COVID earlier than we are in Canada. It's not because the provincial governments have not been able to deliver the vaccines. It's because our Canadian government has not been able to procure enough vaccines in a timely fashion on behalf of the people that we collectively as premiers represent. So the path through this is for us to get as many vaccines in as quick a manner as possible, and for the provinces to continue to make those available to the people in all jurisdictions. And
what I understand, there's 20 million AstraZenecas down in the U.S. somewhere. I'd like to confirm that. Well, that's what I'm hearing from very reliable sources that are sitting there in the refrigerator that the Americans aren't using. So we need NACI, Health Canada, lower the age to 50, and we would love to purchase those vaccines. They're sitting there. They're going to go bad. There's people and provinces that are desperate for vaccines. We also need more Pfizer. If the Americans ever want to help us, this is the time. Ship them up here. As I've said many times, I'll hop in my pickup truck and drive down there, and I'm sure the other premiers will hop in the back of the pickup with me, and we'll drive down there together to pick them up. That's a situation we're in right now. It's a very, very serious predicament we're facing.
We'll take the final follow-up from Kevin.
Premiers, during this press conference, a few of you have used the rhetoric of blaming the federal government for vaccine procurement and distribution. Why do you choose to blame the feds rather than, as you keep saying, it's important that we work together, that we are a team? Why are you preaching that for within your province but not outside of your province?
Well, I will go first.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just like to say the federal government has had really three three initiatives that they needed to take care of through this. One was to work with provinces to support Canadians through the public health measures that we had in place. Two was to control the inflow and outflow of people and ultimately this virus in and out of Canada. Three, and likely one of the most important measures that the federal government is responsible for, and we talked about this on many First Ministers calls, was the procurement of enough vaccines in a timely fashion for Canadians. The provinces, on the other hand, have the public health divisions and our health authorities that will ultimately then administer those vaccines to all Canadians collectively. This is in the government's, this is in their end of the swimming pool. It was on them to ensure they were procuring enough vaccines in a timely fashion for all Canadians. We're seeing how that has benefited other nations that were able to do that. Yes, we're getting more vaccines today and in the days ahead, and that is a good thing. But this ultimately is our way through this pandemic, and we're late. We're late in having the large number of vaccines that we ultimately need to achieve herd immunity and start to get our lives back to normal in our respective provinces.
Well, you know, when I look at this, I just look at facts. It's not about pointing fingers at any level of government. As I said, the facts are we're short on the supply, and I've had many comments from many people that I'm constantly complimenting, you know, the federal government. They're trying their best, always complimenting the PM, and but the facts are, these are just facts. We don't have the supply. You know, you know, if you want me to make up a story on some other reason, I can't. We need the vaccines. We proved, you give us the vaccines, we'll start rolling out over 100,000 a day. And if you give us more, then it gives us more flexibility, more certainty, more opportunity. When we're ramping up to 1,200, 1,400 pharmacies, we could ramp up to 3,200 pharmacies. And if each pharmacy even did 100 a day, that's 320,000 vaccines a day. We need the supply, as simple as that. I think all of us collectively, we're working on making sure this never happens again, to have a domestic supply. We had a great announcement with the federal government with Sanofi. We're putting hundreds of millions of dollars in, both the federal government and ourselves, and we're going to continue working all together, all the provinces, to share ideas on making sure that we have domestic manufacturing here of vaccines. We have the technology, we have the people, we have the smarts, we have the pharmaceutical companies. You know, I sat back and thought the billions and billions of dollars, you know, that we have spent. Guys, we would have been better off buying shares into Pfizer to make sure we got our supply. You know, that's what it comes down to, is we need vaccines. Simple as that.
And Kevin, I didn't hear any of us use the word blame. We commented on the shortage of supply, and that's the federal responsibility. There has been, I think, a unprecedented level of cooperation between governments over the past 13 tough months. We've all worked together. We've generally put aside political and partisan differences to do so. We've had dozens of meetings between premiers and premiers and the Prime Minister. We've done a lot together, but that doesn't, none of that overcomes the fundamental problem, which is that Canada has been ranked between 40th and 50th in the world in per capita access to doses. Now, Kevin, you're not shy about running stories blaming the provincial government for its response to COVID when you think we're wrong. I'd be interested to know how many you've done holding the federal government to account for failing to get us the doses that we need. So I'll just say that the federal government completely monopolizes this area. We've looked with our lawyers at whether we could unilaterally purchase foreign-produced vaccines, and the answer is no. Why? Because Health Canada brought in a regulation barring us from doing so. They will, you can't import a COVID-19 vaccine into the country without a Health Canada number, and they won't issue it unless it's part of the federal procurement program. So they've actually blocked provinces from taking their own initiatives. Federal policy going back to the early 2000s that drove brand name manufacturers out of the country because of undermining patent laws created a situation with no domestic production. So this is not a political issue. It's not a political football. It is this, the core issue that we are facing, though. It's a public health issue. It's that jurisdictions around the world that produce no vaccines, starting with Israel, have now achieved effective immunity in their population. And we're nowhere close to that. So that is a shared frustration. I think that frustration is understandable, and we're doing our best to get through this.
I would like to add to this as well, and I think that the opportunity right now is, given where the United States is in relation to their vaccine and the percentage of the population, and in fact they moved up their schedule a couple of weeks. It would indicate, in addition to the AstraZeneca that Premier Ford points out, there would be surplus vaccines available, whether it be Pfizer or Moderna, but they would be coming available because they're in a position to do so. So I think the onus right now, looking forward, given the variants, given the challenges we have, given the restlessness we have in the public, is to leverage our relationship we've had with the U.S. for generations. And effectively, I'd like to think that the federal government would be able to do that. And because we want our borders all open again, and so do they. And we have a tremendous, trading relation, but certainly family relations that we move back and forth all the time. And we've missed that for the last 18 months or 13 months. So I would just think that this opportunity right now is procurement is a problem, but our next door neighbor would appear to have surplus. And our next door neighbor should be our strongest ally, because they too want to get North America kind of back in vogue. And what better way to do that than to show the working relationship and leveraging our relationship. And we should be able to count on the federal government. And I know in our last conversations with the First Minister's meetings and the Prime Minister, that was a focus. But let's make it happen, because it's our shortest route, I think, to having surplus vaccines to meet our needs.
And all, if I can add this, all four of us have traveled together down to the U.S. when it came to the free trade deal, USMCA. We did an incredible job working together, working with the federal government. There's no better group than the four of us, plus other premiers, to go down there, talk to our governors, that we have a great relationship, to see if they are able to get additional Pfizer vaccines up here. They're our closest ally, closest trading partner, and we're in a tough position. To the American president, President Biden, if there's ever a time that we need your help, it's right now. It's not a month down the road, and it's not 2 months down the road. We need a shipment of Pfizer, Moderna, or would be willing to take the 20 million AstraZeneca that's sitting somewhere in a refrigerator down there. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And there's one thing I can say. I know each and every premier is going to work hard. I know the federal government will work hard. All municipalities are working hard, and we will get through this.
Thanks, everyone.